What are you doing? Just a second, she replied, pulling out an adorable little purse with a fluffy pom-pom attached to the zipper. I've always felt weirdly nervous when I'm apart from this for too long. She said this without anyone even asking, like she just needed to share it. Then she pulled out a notebook and pen from her purse and started scribbling something down. Her head accidentally bumped into Jin-Woo's shoulder a couple of times because she was too focused on writing to notice where she was going. Scritch. She closed the notebook, satisfied with whatever she'd written. She grabbed her purse, which she'd hung over her shoulder while writing, and stuffed it back into the gear pack. But she kept the notebook and pushed it toward Jin-Woo, who was eyeing her warily. Huh? Jin-Woo asked. Confusion etched on his face as he stared at the notebook. The female healer fought to hold back her tears. I wrote a note for my family. Can you give it to them when you get out? If he laughed now, it would probably hurt her feelings. Sure, I'll hold on to it, he replied. But I don't think I'll get the chance to deliver it. She nodded, understanding how tough their situation was. With those orc warriors staring at us so hard, escaping seemed impossible. Plus, the luggage carrier is only E rank, which isn't very strong. She still didn't understand what Jin-Woo was hinting at. Before long they reached the hideout. The other hunters were on edge, and Jin-Woo could practically feel their fear. They were all in this together, whether they liked it or not. He glanced around the area. The cavern was huge, way bigger than the giant's lair from yesterday. But it didn't feel empty because of all the high orcs packed into the space. There were at least double the number here compared to the ones that had escorted them earlier. About 100, Jin-Woo muttered to himself. But he knew it might be even more. No wonder there weren't any magic beasts elsewhere in the dungeon. They were all right here. Hugh stared at the rows of orcs, and his face turned pale. If this many high orcs ever escaped the gate, they could easily destroy a small town before the strongest hunters arrived to stop them. Hewson wiped the cold sweat from his back. We need to take out that boss at least, he said, swallowing hard and trying to sound braver than he felt. The high orcs moved aside, clearing a path for the hunters. Their leader grunted and waved them forward. The group followed their guide through the dark cave, until they reached a strange stone pedestal in one corner of the room. One of the hunters suddenly yelled, "Look up there!" Atop the pedestal stood an intimidating orc shaman, dressed in a wild mix of creepy accessories, a spooky mask, a necklace made of bones, and earrings that looked like tiny skulls. That's the boss. Ki-hun could feel it. Most of the strange energy in this place was coming from this mysterious creature. The four guards looked sharp, their eyes narrowing as they watched. These weren't your average high orcs, they seemed tougher, more alert. This wasn't looking good. Could the hunters sneak past these guards and finally take down the boss? Each of them wondered the same thing. They paused in front of the shaman. The air was super tense between the high orcs and the humans, who eyed each other from a distance. But the shaman didn't seem worried one bit.
Hey.
They chuckled casually. The figure opened its big scary mouth and let out a loud cackle from behind its spooky mask. "Welcome, humans," it said in a creepy voice. The strike squad members glanced at each other. Ki-hun would give the signal, and then they'd all charge together, heading straight for the shaman. They were waiting for the perfect moment to attack. But then, something strange happened. The air around them started to feel icy cold. This team was made up of the best fighters, so they quickly noticed the change in temperature. It turned out the shaman was causing it. As the shaman yanked off its mask, a burst of magic exploded out with a loud whoosh. The hunters froze like deer caught in headlights, their eyes wide with fear. "Wow," one hunter whispered, trembling. "This is crazy. How can something have so much power?" Another asked, voice shaking. The shaman sneered at the hunters' scared faces. "Are you all afraid of me?" Koan took a deep breath and stepped forward, his heart pounding. He managed to ask, "Why did you bring us here?" "You could have let your warriors kill us," Kasun said, confused. The shaman gave him a spooky grin that made his blood run cold. "For fun," he added with a creepy laugh. Kasun's eyes widened in shock. "What? That's why you brought us here?" he asked, trying to understand the shaman's twisted plan. The shaman continued, sounding sinister. "While we wait, I'll have some fun of my own, killing you one by one for my warriors' amusement." The high orc warriors roared with excitement at the thought of the bloody game ahead. The hunters struggled to keep up as the orcs pushed in. They were straining for breath, and one of them even broke down in tears. But then the shaman stopped mid-sentence. Its eyes locked onto Jin-Woo. But wait. There's something strange about you humans, it said. Ki-han's eyes sparkled with hope. This is our chance, he thought. His neck muscles bulged as he screamed, now, and charged forward, sword in hand. But when he glanced back, everything fell silent. He turned to see his teammates frozen in place. The overwhelming power of the orcs had crushed their spirit. Ki-han's heart sank. No, someone has to step up. Kishon couldn't just stand there. He turned back around. The shaman was still mocking them, and its guards weren't even moving. This might be their only chance. Whether it was luck or fate, as long as Kishon's sword could reach. Amtim. Amtim. Kishon charged with all his might, swinging his blade high in the air. Ya, Kishon, he shouted. But before he could even land a hit, something stopped him. Kishon. It was an invisible magical barrier. A kif. Kishon was thrown to the ground, rolling around a few times. Here's the first volunteer, the shaman sneered. With a wave of its hand, Kishon's body shot straight up into the air. Amtim. Autin. It was some kind of anti-gravity magic. The shaman kept muttering spells, lifting Kishon as high as a 2-story building. Then it cast another spell. Kishon came crashing back down to the ground with a loud thud. Kishon. Before he could even process the pain, he was lifted into the air again. Kishon. The shaman and the other orcs burst into laughter, their sharp teeth glinting. Kishon. Akim. The shaman kept toying with Kishon, tossing him up and slamming him down over and over like a rag doll. When the hunter crashed to the ground for the 4th time, blood burst from his lips. His friends watched in horror as his face turned pale. But no one had the courage to step forward and help. They whispered his name. Ki. All they could do was stand there shaking, watching as Ki-hyu struggled to stay strong. Then a loud thud echoed as the healer's legs gave out, and she collapsed to the ground. Finally, the shaman lifted Ki-hyu's body again. This time for the 5th attempt. This one's lasting longer than I expected, Ki-hun said, his voice tight with effort. A low moan escaped from him as he clutched his sword tightly, refusing to let go even when all hope seemed lost. Whoosh. Bam. Ki-hun's sword slipped from his grasp as he was slammed into the ground again and again. Finally, with a loud clangs, his blade hit the dirt, just as Ki-hun's body fell to the ground. Oof. Ki vanished into thin air. The shaman blinked in confusion. Where could that bag of broken bones have gone? The boss searched the lair, looking for Ki-hun. There he was, lying in a corner nearby. Beside him stood Jin-Woo, who had placed Ki-hun on the ground, and now glared at the shaman. Captain, can I ask you something? Jin-Woo said. Ki-hun still looked dazed. What are you talking about? Jin-Woo continued, his voice steady. Am I allowed to kill all the magic beasts here? The shaman pointed its chin in confusion. Just then a guard with a machete charged toward Jin-Woo. His eyes gleamed as he focused on the attacker. With a swift motion, Jin-Woo raised his palm, and the guard froze mid-air, as if grabbed by an invisible hand. The beast let out a confused cry before Jin-Woo pointed downward. The guard thudded to the ground, leaving the shaman in shock. Did you see that? Jin-Woo asked Ki-hun, who slowly sat up, still disoriented. The ground cracked where Jin-Woo had slammed the guard down. Jin-Woo wasn't done yet. Just like the shaman had done to Ki-hun before, he lifted the guard's body high into the air again. Hom. Wham. The guard let out a pained yelp as Jin-Woo bounced it back and forth between the ceiling and the floor, like dribbling a basketball. Finally the guard's head wedged into the ceiling. With one final hum, pieces of the ceiling started to crumble down around them. Hierarchs and hunters were both shocked by the sight of the guard's lifeless body dangling in midair. Ki-hun was trembling as he asked Jin-Woo, "Just who are you?" And Jin-Woo stepped forward, his voice firm and clear. "I'll ask again," he said. This was the hunter's territory, and only one person here could speak on their behalf. Ki-hun's fear had reached a boiling point, and no longer cared about Jin-Woo's true identity as the luggage carrier. All that mattered now was whether he was allowed to take care of the magic beast present. "Am I okay to kill all the magic beasts here?" he asked, his voice shaking. Jin-Woo was fuming. He couldn't believe he'd been outsmarted by a magical creature. It made him look like a total pushover. Tears of frustration welled up in his eyes as he muttered, Just do it already." That's all Jin-Woo needed to hear. He scrambled to his feet, and the orcs immediately closed in around him. Behind them stood their shaman, a sly grin spreading across his face. He chuckled, clearly entertained by what he'd just seen. Not bad for a human, the shaman said with a smirk. You've got some interesting tricks up your sleeve. With a quick flick of his wrist, the orcs tightened their circle around Jin-Woo, trapping him. Jin-Woo smirked at the beast and said, "How far do you think those fancy moves will get you?" His eyes turned icy cold with anger. He had never been a fan of magic creatures, but this time, he really wanted to defeat one. The beast let out a laugh, clearly amused. But Jin-Woo could tell it was also a bit scared. "I'm saving you for last," Jin-Woo threatened, his voice steady and confident. He called out, "Shadows, come to me." In an instant, 2 sharp daggers appeared in his hands. With a flick of his wrists, the blades shot forward, screeching through the air. Just as things were heating up, a sleek black car suddenly pulled over to the side of the road. The scene was intense and intriguing, leaving everyone wondering what would happen next. A guy in sunglasses and a sharp black suit stepped out of the driver's seat. This was Jin-Chul, part of the surveillance team from the Hunters Association. 3 more guys from his team climbed out after him. "Hey Manager Wu, I thought we were going back to the association," one of them asked. "Not yet," Jin-Chul replied. His eyes locked on something in the distance. "Something's come up." He stared at a massive gate far away. A-rank gates were always intimidating, and this one was no exception. Jin-Chul narrowed his eyes, sizing it up like it might jump at him any second. What if that huge gate swung open, and all those magical creatures rushed out at once? Just imagining it sent chills down his spine. Why on earth did he sign up to be a miner in such a creepy place? And for 2 whole days, no less. Even if President Go hadn't asked him personally to investigate, Jin-Chul would have come to snoop around on his own. It's hard to find any dirt on the guy. The other party was an S-rank awakened being, after all. He was an A-rank hunter, so sneaking around to check out Jin-Woo without being noticed would be really hard. So he figured, why not just go say hi like everything's normal? His idea was pretty straightforward. Tell Jin-Woo he had some stuff to do nearby and stop by to chat, then ask him a few questions. I mean, wouldn't you wonder too if someone as strong as an S-rank hunter was doing manual labor? It makes sense that people would be curious. Jin-Woo had really impressed the Hunters Association, and even their president had grown very fond of him. The president was keeping a close eye on everything Jin-Woo did. Jin-Chul tried to calm himself down as he searched for someone from the Hunters Guild. It's totally normal to ask questions, he kept telling himself. "Excuse me," Jin-Chul said to a staff member. "I'm looking for the excavation team." The staff member raised an eyebrow. "May I ask who?" "We're from the associations," Jin-Chul replied. The staff checked his ID and pointed him toward where the mining team was waiting. "Right over there," someone said, pointing across the site. "Thank you," another voice replied. 4 members of the surveillance team had arrived to meet with the excavation crew. The foreman must have been tipped off because he hurried over, wiping his hands on a dusty rag. Hello, what brings the association's surveillance team here today?" The excavators, who had been taking a break, suddenly looked nervous. The word surveillance team hung heavy in the air, weighing on the hunters like a challenge. These hunters were no ordinary ones. They acted as judge, jury, and sometimes even the executioners of powerful beings that other hunters couldn't handle. Their authority was unmatched, and everyone knew it. Suddenly, voices buzzed around Yoon-suk. "What's going on?" someone asked. "The surveillance team is here," another hunter replied, their tone low, but urgent. Hunters began to murmur among themselves. Their curiosity piqued. They gathered closer, forming a tight circle around Yoon-suk, as if something big was definitely about to go down. Jin-Chul stepped forward, removing his sunglasses and scanning the area. His sharp eyes searched for Jin-Woo, but found nothing. Frowning, he turned to the foreman. "Where can I find Hunter Jin-Woo-sung?" he demanded. Before the foreman could answer, a hunter abruptly jumped forward. "I knew it," they exclaimed, their voice rising with excitement. Songwoo, the same guy who bumped into Jin-Woo on purpose yesterday, was talking like crazy, spit flying from his mouth. "That guy gave me this creepy smile, like a killer or something," he said. Jin-Chul's eyebrows dipped in confusion. A killer's eyes. What was going on? The room erupted with noise, everyone chattering all at once. But Jin-Chul tuned it out. keeping his eyes fixed on Songgu. What exactly happened? Songgi hesitated, looking a bit uncomfortable. It's not really a big deal, he said quickly, waving his hand like he was brushing it off. But seriously, his eyes were super creepy. Jinchul stared at him for a moment before turning back to Yoon-suk. Where is Hunter Jin-Woo's Sung now? He asked. Sung is inside the gate. Jin-Woo went into an active A-rank dungeon. That sounded crazy. Jinchul's eyes popped wide with surprise. Why? He asked. The foreman shrugged. Our luggage carrier didn't show up. No one else stepped forward, so Sung went instead. Jinchul stayed silent for a moment. Then the foreman added, There's something else. What is it? Jinchul asked curiously. Probably nothing important, the foreman said hesitantly. But, Hunter Hyan Cha was looking for Sung earlier and followed him into the dungeon. That seemed really strange. The foreman looked puzzled, but Jinchul's mind was racing after hearing this. Hyan Cha, the vice president of the Hunters Guild. Why was she searching for Jin-Woo? And why would she follow him into the dungeon? What was going on here? Jinchul had only come to check on Jin-Woo, but it felt like he'd stumbled onto something big. For now, he decided to examine the gate. That seemed like the best move he could make. I'd like to take a look at the gate, Jinchul said. Certainly, the foreman replied with a chuckle and waved him on. As Jinchul turned to leave with his subordinates, Songgu quickly stepped in front of him, stopping him in his tracks. Hey, Mr. Seonggu asked eagerly. Did that troublemaker Jin-Woo Sung do something bad? Did he hurt someone badly? He looks like he could. Jinchul's eye twitched as he realized why Jin-Woo had glared at him. Jin-Woo seemed strong enough to send someone flying with just a flick of his finger, but too many people were around, so he held back. Jinchul knew he had to stay calm around regular people. It was part of his job working for the government. He let out a deep sigh and said as politely as possible, You'll find out everything tomorrow night on the news. This answer seemed to satisfy Seonggu, who then responded in his usual bold way. See, I knew it. I told you he seemed off. He didn't look suspicious though. Yeah, but he was really good at his job. Sunchiu didn't let their doubts stop him from bragging about his detective skills. I always spot the bad apples first, he said proudly. Jinchu rolled his eyes and headed toward the gate instead of engaging with Sunchiu's antics. But then, just a few steps away from the entrance, Jinchu froze. His expression changed to one of utter shock, like he'd just seen a ghost. Manager Wu, his team members asked, confused by his reaction. This can't be right, Jinchu muttered to himself, shaking his head in disbelief. He pulled out his phone and quickly opened the association's website. He hurried to the A-rank gate that the Hunters Guild was planning to raid today. His eyes lit up in surprise. Why does it show such low mana? He couldn't help but shake his head. The reading must be off. Not every A-rank hunter is the same, and Jinchul was definitely one of the best among them. His instinct told him something was off about the mana reading at the gate. He barked an order, get the mana meter. Jihoon's serious expression showed he understood the urgency, so he hurried to grab it from the car. This device was way more accurate than the ones regular staff used. This super reliable mana meter almost never broke down because it used top-notch essence stones that cost over 1 billion won. Suddenly, beep, the meter finished its scan. Just as I thought. The results were way different from what the group had found before. This could mean big trouble for the strike team they set up based on the first reading. Luckily, with 2 S-rank members on board, things should be okay. But still worrying. Just then, Jinchul picked up the meter from the ground. Boom. The gate started shaking hard. Jinchul's body shook from a huge surge of magical energy. His 3 team members were also trembling, though they didn't feel it as strongly as he did. Manager Wu, one of them stuttered. What just happened? Jinchul asked, turning to the youngest member of his group, whose face had gone pale. Are you okay? I'm fine, the young man replied, though his voice wobbled. Jinchul nodded and carefully checked the back of his own hands. What's going on with my body? He wondered silently. Goosebumps popped up on their skin as they stood there. Jinchul stood up tall and said, We're going in. Huh? Someone asked, surprised. You mean we're going into the dungeon? Another person questioned, sounding nervous. Jinchul looked serious. If any of you are scared, you can wait out here. But Jinchul knew something wasn't right with the readings. It was his job to tell the hunters inside, and it was part of their group's role to help others. No way, one of them said quickly. We're coming. Jin-Chul gave a firm nod, showing he was confident in their decision. Hold on. You stay back, and tell the association about this new reading, Jin-Chul ordered. The youngest member of his team looked shocked. What? What are you asking me to do? He stuttered. Jin-Chul squeezed the man's shoulder reassuringly. Can you handle it? The subordinate took a deep breath, nodded, and said, Yes, sir. I can. Then, Jin-Chul turned toward the dungeon gate. He could feel an enormous power radiating from inside something way beyond normal mana. It was pulsing with energy. What in the world is happening in there? As he wondered. Without hesitation, Jin-Chul led his surveillance team into the dungeon. Meanwhile, Haitian was somewhere else within the labyrinth, tracking down the strike squad. She noticed something odd. Have you ever wondered why there aren't any signs of magic beasts in this dungeon? Usually you'd expect a trail of carcasses from the entrance all the way to the boss's lair. But, Hanan didn't see any no bodies, no bones, nothing. It was weird. Maybe all the creatures were hiding somewhere together. As she puzzled over this mystery, she finally stumbled upon some cadavers. Thump, 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 thump. Hanan, being an S-rank brawler, hurried to the scene quickly. When she arrived, her eyes widened in shock. How is this possible? She exclaimed, staring at the battlefield in disbelief. This was way beyond what she had expected. Every single one of the dead bodies was a high orc warrior. You could tell them apart from regular orcs because of their bright red skin and long canine teeth. But how in the world did Ki-hun's team take down so many? Even weirder, she didn't spot any fallen hunters. If there had been any casualties, they probably would have retreated and saved her the trip. Maybe I've been selling A and B rank hunters short this whole time. That could totally make sense. From what Haim could see, the hunters had won the battle big time. But then something weird caught her attention. She crouched down to take a closer look at one of the bodies. What she found totally surprised her. She quickly checked the others too. Here it is again, she muttered to herself. And there, and over there, her suspicions were growing. But this didn't make sense. How was this even possible? The high orc bodies all bore marks from short, sharp weapons like daggers or knives. These hits weren't fatal, but were enough to stop the orcs in their tracks. It seemed like someone else had already done the tough part, and these hunters just added the finishing touches. People whispered that one hunter had slaughtered 20 high orcs, but here's the crazy thing. Those two died in different ways. One lost his head in a fierce battle, and the other got a deadly hit to the head. So did one person really take down all the others? That seems impossible, right? She was confident in her speed, but she wasn't so sure about matching someone else's actions. As far as she knew, Ki-hun's squad didn't have any assassin-class hunters using short swords or daggers. The thought of a dagger sparked an image. Yesterday, Jin-Woo had stood before the boss's lair with two short weapons in hand. Could he be behind all this? Tassin suddenly turned toward the dungeon depths, her suspicions growing clearer. Her face turned serious. She had felt a strange, powerful wave of magic, something like a vibration she'd never experienced before. The air buzzed with energy. No, she muttered, biting her lip. If this was the boss's magic, there was no way anyone from Ki-hun's squad could survive.